Greetings to you and welcome to this episode of Grace Podcast. I'm Timothy Muse. I'll be your host as we spend this time together today. It's a joy to be with you. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for making this podcast a part of your journey. And I want to thank you for being on the journey, for following through, for taking the step, for asking the questions, for looking at yourself and finding the places where life may need a little bit extra energy. Doesn't mean you're bad. It just means that we are all complicated beings. And when we give energy in one area, maybe we lose that energy in another. So this is an opportunity for you to ask those questions. And I'm so glad that you're here. It takes courage to do that. It takes courage to ask those questions. It takes courage to step out and begin to look at ourselves, have a little self-awareness. So good for you for being here. If this podcast is helpful, please share it out there. Put it out there on your social media feeds. I post on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. If you follow me or the life coaching on any one of those feeds, you're going to see these episodes. Share them. Tag me in it. I'd love to see where you are. If you're on one of the listening platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or Amazon Music, follow us, give us a rating and review. Every positive rating and review tells the platform people are listening, and you'll get notifications when a new episode comes out. And if you want to reach out to me directly, gracelifecoaching.com. That's where you can get a hold of me. That's where all of my information is at. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to do some conversation, some coaching, whatever it is you need. gracelifecoaching.com. I'm here to help out. I'm here to come alongside you, ask some good questions, look at some different things. However I can come alongside you, it would be a joy to be able to do so. So we've been walking through this series now on what the end of summer can teach us as we grow. Today, I want to talk about the space between one season and the next. You know, we're in a time when summer is starting to wind down, and almost immediately we begin to talk about fall. What's coming in fall? School starts, schedules fill up, responsibilities return, football season begins, stores change their displays, the evenings get shorter, and before summer is fully ended, we have already mentally moved into the next season. We do that in life too. We finish one project and immediately ask, what's next? We reach one goal and immediately set another. We end one chapter and feel the pressure to begin again. We leave one job and immediately wonder what's next in my life. We end a relationship and wonder when we should start dating again. We retire and ask what we're supposed to do now. We finish raising children and wonder what our purpose is next. We experience an ending and immediately we feel the pressure to replace what was lost. But what if transition isn't something we're supposed to rush through? What if the space between seasons has value? What if there are things we can only learn when we stop trying to hurry into the next chapter? That's where I want to go today. You don't have to rush the next season. You know, we live in a culture that doesn't particularly like empty space. If there's a pause in conversation, someone reaches for a phone. If there's an opening in the calendar, we want to fill it. If a project ends, we want to start another. If we have a free weekend, we assume that we have to make plans. If we're waiting somewhere for 5 minutes, what do? We pull out our phone, we look at our screen. Because silence makes us uncomfortable. Stillness can make us uncomfortable. Waiting definitely makes us uncomfortable. We like motion. Motion makes us feel productive. Motion gives us the sense that something is happening. But movement and progress are not always the same thing. You can be moving quickly and still be moving in the wrong direction. And sometimes the only way to recognize that is to stop. That's one of the gifts of transition. Transition creates a pause, and that pause gives us a chance to ask, do I really want to keep going in this same direction? Do I really want to keep going in the direction that I'm going? You know, there's an enormous amount of pressure to know what's coming next. How often have you been asked, so what's next? You graduate. What's next? You retire. What are you going to do now? You leave a job. Where are you going to go next? You finish a major project. What's the next big thing? There's often an assumption that we should always have an answer. But sometimes the healthiest answer is, I don't know yet. That can feel uncomfortable. We may worry people will think we lack ambition. We may worry we're falling behind. We may worry we're wasting time. But not knowing can be an honest and healthy place to be, because sometimes the next step is unclear, precisely because we haven't had time to understand the previous one yet. You may need time to recover. You may need time to reflect. You may need time to grieve or celebrate. You may simply need time to hear your own thoughts again. And that's not wasted time, my friends. That's growth. That's growth. There's something important about understanding that. It's not wasted time when we stop. It's part of our growth process. There's an important difference that I want to make sure we're clear about here between pausing and being stuck. Transition is not the same as stagnation. Pausing says, I'm intentionally creating space. I'm opening myself to see what is out there. Being stuck says, I don't know how to move and I'm afraid to try. A healthy transition is not a permanent hiding place. Eventually, decisions need to be made. Eventually, movement returns, but movement does not have to happen immediately. Think about the end of a long trip. You come home, you unpack, you do laundry, you put things away, you get your bearings. You don't necessarily arrive home and immediately leave for another vacation. Your body and mind need time to settle. Life transitions are often like that. You need time to unpack. Not a physical suitcase, emotional ones. What just happened? What did I learn? What do I want to keep? What do I want to change? What do I need now? Those are transition questions, and they deserve time. They deserve space to breathe in and out, because when we don't give them time, then we're just carrying things into the next season that we don't need to. We don't need to carry things into the next season, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And honestly, if we're going to have good transitions, we need to make sure that we spend time with our feelings as we close one season and move into the next. That's one of the reasons we rush, because slowing down may allow emotions to catch up with us. And that can be really, really uncomfortable. If we stay busy enough, maybe we don't have to think about the relationship that ended. If we jump immediately into another project, maybe we don't have to ask whether we enjoyed the last one. If we fill our schedules after retirement or with a free weekend, maybe we don't have to face questions like, what am I without my job? What am I without people wanting to be around me? If we quickly find another person to date, maybe we don't have to sit with loneliness. Sometimes busyness isn't productivity. Sometimes busyness is avoidance. That doesn't mean every full schedule is unhealthy. Please don't hear me say that. But it's worth asking, am I moving towards something or am I running away from something? What is your busyness? Is your busyness moving towards something, the life that you want to build, or are you running away from something? They can look very similar from the outside, but on the inside, they're very different. Transitions, slowing down, taking the time between seasons allows us to answer that question and allows us to give ourselves time to feel what we feel. Now, transitions are complicated because we can experience several emotions at once, and they can be conflicting. Maybe summer ends, and it makes you feel a little sad. And maybe you're excited about fall. Both can be true. Maybe you're relieved a difficult job is over and you still miss the people. Both can be true. Maybe your child moving out is something you're proud of and the quiet house hurts. Both can be true. Maybe retirement is something you look forward to for years and now you feel strangely lost. Both can be true. Maybe ending a relationship was the right decision and you still miss the person. Both can be true. We often think we need to choose one emotion, happy or sad, excited or afraid, grateful or disappointed. But human beings are more complicated than that. Transition invites us to let emotions exist without immediately trying to fix them. You don't have to solve every feeling. Sometimes you simply need to experience it, sit with it for a little bit, see what it has to say, and then move on. But we can't do that when we rush from one thing to the next. We can't do that when we push from one thing to the next. Because you see, my friends, there's wisdom in the in-between. There's a unique kind of clarity that can come in space between chapters. You're no longer fully attached to what was, and you haven't yet committed yourself to what's to come. That can create perspective. You may begin noticing things you couldn't see while you were busy living the previous season. Maybe you realized how exhausted you are, or how much you enjoyed something, or how much your priorities have changed. Maybe you see that you're saying yes to too many things. Maybe you discovered that a goal you chased for years isn't exactly what you want anymore. Or you realize that something you thought you needed was mostly about impressing other people. Those insights often need quiet. We sometimes keep making the same choices because we never give ourselves enough distance to evaluate them. Transition creates that distance. And another thing that transition creates is rest. One of the worst times to make a major decision is when you're deeply exhausted. Exhaustion changes perspective. Everything looks harder, everything feels heavier, your patience is lower, your ability to imagine possibilities decreases, and yet we often finish an intense season and immediately try to plan the next 10 years. Maybe the better first question is, do I need a plan or do I need rest? That's a very important distinction. Sometimes we interpret exhaustion as lack of purpose. We think, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And maybe you don't. Or maybe you're just simply tired. Rest first, then evaluate. You may see things differently once your energy returns. We talked about that in our rest portion in our series that we just wrapped up here previously, about how rest can give us perspective, about how rest can open our eyes. I would encourage you to go back and look at those episodes if you haven't walked through them. If you're new to this and you're just catching up, then that's great. Welcome aboard. I love that. Go back and check out that, because we learned there that rest isn't a reward for finishing everything. Rest is deeply needed. We need rest. We need to be able to step back and rest and get perspective so that we can move forward with confidence. And to be reminded in the midst of rest that we don't need to reinvent ourselves every season. That's not necessary. Now, we can put enormous pressure on ourselves to reinvent. New season, new me. New routine, new goals, new identity. Sometimes that can be exciting. Oh my goodness, it certainly can be. But sometimes you don't need to completely reinvent yourself. You may just need to adjust a little bit. Maybe you don't need a new career. You need healthier boundaries in a career you already have. Maybe you don't need to completely transform your fitness routine. You just need to start walking 3 times a week. Maybe you don't need to leave every relationship behind. Maybe it's just one honest conversation that needs to happen. Maybe you don't need a brand new life, my friends. Maybe you need to live your existing life more intentionally. Growth doesn't always require dramatic change. Sometimes growth can be subtle. A better boundary, a slower morning, a different response, a few more no's, a few more yeses to what matter. We don't need to completely reinvent ourselves, just to live more intentionally and see where things are at, to pause and move away from the urgency of life. We live in such an urgent life. One of the reasons we rush is because so many things feel urgent. The phone buzzes, the email arrives, someone needs an answer, the calendar fills, but urgency and importance are not the same thing. It's really important for us to grab this distinction. Urgency and importance are not the same thing. Urgency says respond now. Every time your phone buzzes, every time a text comes in, every time an email comes in, we think it's urgent, but we have to ask the question, is it important? Importance says choose wisely. Choose wisely. Transitions give us the opportunity to examine what is actually important. As you move toward a new season, ask, what deserves my time? What deserves my attention? What deserves my energy? What matters enough to protect? What am I tired of allowing urgency to steal? That kind of reflection can completely reshape how you enter the next season. Which leads to the question, what if you left some room? What if you left room in your life? Imagine planning your next season without filling every square on the calendar. Imagine deliberately leaving room. A free evening, an unscheduled Saturday, a quiet morning, time to walk or time to read or time to sit, time for relationships or for nothing in particular. That may sound unproductive, but open space often creates opportunities we could not predict. Conversations happen, ideas arrive, restoration happens, creativity emerges. You notice things differently, you breathe. A life without margin is fragile. When every minute and every dollar and every ounce of energy is already committed, one unexpected event can create chaos. Margins give us room to respond. Maybe one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself in the next season is not another goal. Maybe it's space. Maybe it's space. Space to have a little bit of room to breathe and live and experience what's around you, and to be reminded that the next season does not have to look like the last one. Just because you lived one way in the previous season doesn't mean the next season has to operate by the same rules. Maybe summer was busy. Fall doesn't have to be. Maybe your last year was dominated by work. The next one doesn't have to be. Maybe you've always said yes to a particular commitment. You can reconsider. Maybe your identity has been built around being constantly available. That can change. Every transition gives you an opportunity to ask, do I want to bring this pattern with me? You are not obligated to recreate every old habit simply because it's familiar. I want you to grasp this. You are not obligated to recreate every old habit simply because it seems familiar or it feels familiar. You are allowed to examine those habits and say, you know what? That served me in a time, but it's not serving me anymore. That served me then, but it's not serving me now. You are allowed to recreate yourself. That is a powerful gift. Every human being is allowed to recreate themselves. So, what do you want the next season to feel like? We normally ask what we want to accomplish, right? That's useful. But try another question. How do I want the next season of my life to feel? Calmer, more intentional, more connected, more adventurous, healthier, less rushed, more focused, more creative, more peaceful. Then follow up with what choices would support that. If you want a calmer season, you can't feel every evening. If you want deeper relationships, you need to create time for people. If you want better health, your calendar needs to reflect that. If you want creativity, you need space. If you want financial peace, some spending decisions need to change. Feelings are not entirely under our control, but we can build lives that make certain experiences more likely. We can create lives that allow those feelings to reside more fully. So I would encourage you to do a transition audit. Okay, do a transition audit. Take a piece of paper and write down 4 headings. The first one, what am I finishing? What season is winding down? Maybe it's literally summer. Summer is winding down. Maybe it's a project. Maybe it's a stage of parenting or a job or a commitment or a difficult period. Name it. Just write it down. What do I need to process? That'd be the second question. What emotions haven't you had time to acknowledge? Relief, sadness, pride, anger, gratitude, exhaustion. Don't fix them. Just name them. Give them space. What parts do you need to process? And what do I need before I move forward? That's the third piece. Rest, information, a conversation, time to heal, support from others, distance from something, clarity. Be specific. Be specific about this, because when we're specific, then we can plot solutions forward. And the last one is, what do I not want to rush? What do I not want to rush? What do I want to take time with? Maybe most of those emotions are those things that you need moving forward. Maybe you just need 1 or 2 of them. Maybe that's really where you need to be. Maybe it's your career decision or a relationship decision, a new commitment, a major purchase, a goal. Give yourself permission to say, I don't need to decide today. Sometimes that sentence alone can reduce enormous pressure. There are things that we need to decide today, like what we're having for dinner, but there are some things that don't need decisions today. They need room. They need room to breathe and come to fruition. They need room to grow, and we need to give them room. We need to give them space. We need to give our brains and our lives space. Take 1 hour this week with no outcome. Here's a simple challenge. Find 1 hour this week. No productivity goal, no agenda, no expectations that something meaningful has to happen. Put your phone away if you can, take a walk, sit outside, have a cup of coffee, drive somewhere quiet, write in a notebook, sit by the water, listen to music, whatever you can do. Simply give your mind room. If you want to know what you need to carry in, you need to give your mind room to figure it out. At first, it's going to feel restless, and that's normal because we're so used to moving and producing and being and giving. Many of us are so accustomed to stimulation that quiet feels uncomfortable, but stay with it. Let your mind catch up with your life. You may be surprised what surfaces when you stop demanding that every moment produces something. And trust yourself. Trust yourself without having every answer. There's a great deal of freedom in realizing you don't have to know everything that comes next. You only need enough clarity for the next step. We sometimes want a 5-year map before taking a 5-minute action, but life rarely gives us that certainty. You decide, you move, you learn, you adjust, you take another step. That's how most lives are built. Not through perfect plans, through responsive movement. So if you're between seasons right now, you don't need every answer. Maybe you simply need to trust that you will respond when the next step becomes clear. You've done that before. You're here because you've navigated uncertainty before. You didn't know everything then either, and somehow you kept moving. That's a powerful thing. Look, there's nothing wrong with being between things. There's not. Maybe you're listening today and this is exactly the place you're in. You're not where you were. You're not where you're going. You're between. You're between jobs or plans or identity or relationships or seasons. And that can feel unsettling because there may not be a clear label for who you are right now. But you do not need to rush out of the in-between simply because it's uncomfortable. Sometimes the bridge is the part of the journey. Sometimes the hallway between two rooms matters. Sometimes the pause between songs helps us appreciate the next note. This season of transition is still a part of your life. Don't treat it as a waste of time. Treat it as something you can learn from and dwell with. As we close today, I want to take us back to late summer. There's still warmth, but something is shifting. The light is changing, schedules are changing, nature is preparing, but it doesn't panic. You don't see trees screaming, fall is coming, we have to hurry. The season changes gradually. There's movement, there's rhythm, there's transition. Maybe your life needs a little more of that. You don't need to rush into the next version of yourself. You don't have to solve every question tonight. You don't need a perfect plan before the month ends. You don't have to immediately replace everything that has ended. You can pause. You can process. You can listen. You can ask better questions. You can make room. You can say, I don't know yet, and still trust yourself. Because growth isn't always visible movement. Sometimes growth is a wisdom you gain when standing still long enough to notice what your life is telling you. So before you rush into the next season, ask yourself, what needs to be finished? What needs to be felt? What needs to be understood? What needs to be rested? And then, when the time is right, ask, what is the next faithful step? Not the next 20 steps, just one. There will be another season. There will be another opportunity. There will be another beginning. You don't have to chase it. You can meet it when it arrives. Remember, you are allowed to have space between chapters. Sometimes the pause is where the next version of you begins to take shape. That's what I got for you for today, my friends. I hope it's helpful. If it is, please share it out there. Put it out there on your social media feeds. I post on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. If you're on one of the listening platforms, follow us, give us a rating and review. And if you want to reach out to me, I would love to hear from you. If you need someone to come alongside you, ask some good questions, reach out to me. GraceLifeCoaching.com is where you can get a hold of me. At Grace Life Coaching, we want you to be the best you.